So how would you describe Georgia Appleseed for people who haven't heard of it before and don't know the work that you do?
Well, I'll start. We're a nonprofit public interest law center, and we're devoted to advancing child well-being and child welfare. In other words, what we want to do is make sure that every child in the state has a shot to live a life in which they thrive. And we do that by focusing on two places where kids spend most of their time, and that's at home and at school. And we also pay particular attention to the populations of kids who have the hardest time. And those are kids who, for no fault of their own, they have some obstacles in front of them because of history, marginalization because of their race or their background. Maybe they have disabilities or they're in foster care, or they are LGBTQ, some other aspect of their personality or identity that makes life a little bit more challenging for them. We have what we would call housing justice and school justice. And that's because that's where kids generally are. They're at home or they're at school, right? And so we want to be able to succeed in both places. And so on our housing justice side, we are working with communities, with lawmakers, with judges, with families to help make sure that kids have safe and stable housing. Because we know that housing is one of the most important, what we call social determinants for child success. In other words, if a kid is not housed in a stable and safe place, they're going to have a hard time succeeding at school. And school is important, we know, because school helps prepare the kids to be adults, right? But it also offers other protective factors. So a stable and safe school environment where they have trusted adults and they feel safe and they're learning can protect them against some of the stresses, other things in their life that might lead to poor outcomes. So they might perhaps see the mental health challenges. And in fact, schools can provide, in addition to just that safe, stable environment where they have access and spend time with trusted adults and other kids, it can also provide, you can find direct services there. So they could find access to mental health services or physical health services in addition to the learning that's going on. Not to mention things like food. A lot of kids rely on school for access to food. As well. So we want to make sure that the kids are able to stay in school, they have access to the services and supports that they need to succeed. And we want to make sure, just again to review, that they are in safe and stable housing. And those two things that come together, we think, and that's when we do that as a society, that's when kids have the best chance of graduating from high school and going on to, again, lead successful and hopefully happy lives.
Is it true that a family that say they have nowhere to live other than a hotel, that the parents might not be considered homeless, but the children are considered homeless in that kind of circumstance?
That's a really great question. So the definition of homelessness changes depending upon the program or the legal framework that you're in. So kids have access to certain services if they're considered homeless. And so there's a definition of homelessness that, because of federal law, and then state law plays a part in this too, that schools will use to determine whether or not the child is homeless. And then if so, they have access to certain services at the school, for example. So that term homelessness will differ based on why you're talking about the homelessness, right? So why you're talking about the housing instability. So in some cases, people, when they talk about homelessness, are often thinking about just sort of a normal day life. They may be thinking, oh, this child is unsheltered. In other words, this child lives outside and doesn't have a home at all to live in, like even a physical structure to live in, or they live in their car. But actually, when we're looking at the dangers of homelessness or the dangers of housing instability, we're thinking more broadly about homelessness. And federal law tends to incorporate this as well. So you're actually talking about instability, like you're not in a stable place. You might be moving from one place to another or in a shelter, right? And so it's not that you're out and unsheltered, literally sleeping under a bridge or just trying to find a place to protect yourself from rain, but you don't have a stable home. And the reason why that's significant is because the dangers to children and the long-term negative impacts, those occur even when they're in shelters. It's not enough just to place the child in a place out of the weather. Right? They actually need more than that to thrive.